What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's up, Fantasy Points? We are back with Outside the Box. Week 4, we're going to break down the NFL main slate for this weekend. As usual, we're going to go position by position, looking at the chalk briefly, and then finding some of the best under-owned plays on the slate. Of course, here with the GOAT, Scott Barrett, CEO of Fantasy Points, one of the best NFL data people on the planet. So really excited to break down this upcoming slate with Scott. But we got to first acknowledge last week did not go perfectly for us. We got some things right, but some of the stuff that we like the best went horribly wrong last week. So let's take a look. First of all, Scott, before we even break down this Millie Maker lineup, do you have any overview of last week? How do you feel about it?
No, I'm glad we're breaking down this Millie Maker lineup because I get to say every single one of these plays, not the defense, was in my write-up last week. So there's that. That's my silver lining. That's the one thing I could hang. But no. Do not let me get away with that. Do not, please. On this show, the results were poor. The process, I think, even worse. Some lessons learned. We're going to come back stronger than ever. But yeah, it was rough. I on this show, I touted Derek Carr, who wasn't even low owned. I did get off of him to a large degree on Sunday because Johnny was like, dude, you're an idiot. He's going to be 14%. But still, yeah. What went wrong there? They lost their center after 3 snaps. He is one of the best centers in all of football. Cesar Ruiz, another offensive lineman, missed a bunch of time in that game. And Taysom Hill was ruled out. We knew that at the end of the show. And Rashid Shaheed had 2 drops, or the ball deflected off of his hands at like the 1 yard line on deep throws. Anyway, that was really brutal. Had some other rough calls. But we're going to learn from this. We're going to do better. I want to say you made a point, Neil, about me bullying you on this show. And you have to bully me. That you should be bullying me this week, probably next week as well. Here's what's difficult for me. So all throughout the week, I'm like digging into micro analysis, level analysis on various players all throughout the week. That's what we do for the bulk of this show. Is I'm talking about micro things. And then once it's time for us to build lineups, I need to turn that switch off in my brain and shift from the micro to the macro. Like DFS is something entirely different from football, where it's a game within a game within a game, where you have to build well correlated lineups where it's like, okay, well, we picked holes in this player's matchup, but he fits perfectly here as the bring back on this stack or as leverage of it off this chalkier player. JM to Win is always talking about building lineups that tell a story, or how building a lineup is like picking a lock, and you want to get fewer things you have to get right. So that's why we try and correlate as much as we can and blah, blah, blah. And so that's been difficult for me. And yeah, like I said, I'm the micro guy and I'm really good at the micro stuff, but when the micro stuff matters least, it's earliest in the season because we don't have a good sample on anything. And so you, as the DFS expert, I'm the football expert. You're the DFS expert, the Millie winner. You should be bullying me, the game theory god. Yeah. And so bully me. Let's do it.
You're
Neil.
right. This is the week. I'm going to bully Scott throughout the show. The theme of this show is going to be
take my lunch money,
Scott. I'm going to take your lunch money. No, this is going to be the week where all of your stuff hits, though. I don't think we want to change the process too much after one week went horribly wrong. Like we got some things.
I'm a little shell shocked. I'm not going to lie.
I could tell last week. Scott DM'd me actually towards the end of the 4:00 games, telling me that I need to bully him more because he felt so bad about how things went last week. But honestly, that's 1 week. That's how DFS goes. There are going to be weeks where some of your favorite plays.
Well, I also went all in on like Devon Achane, and I think he's hurt, by the way, and a few other guys, and it's like that wasn't smart. Not all in plays, not literal all in plays, but
right. Yeah, no, I'm not concerned about 1 week's poor results, but it went poorly for us. But let's any other notes on this winning lineup so we can
So we did. So that's what I pivoted to is Darnold stacks. He was our top point per dollar quarterback of the week. Obviously, Jefferson is the key stack there. Dallas Goedert, I said I liked him more than I've liked him in years. I didn't end up with any exposure. I wish I did. The Devonta Smith injury helped, but he was going to get there before that. Juwan Jennings, I think this is when you lost internet connection, but I made the argument for Jennings as a leverage play off of Brandon Ayuk. He led the team in receiving in week 1. He had more catches than Ayuk in the playoffs last year when Debo was dealing with injuries. I talked about Kyron's red zone XFP and touchdown upside, but should have known Rams would lean more into 12 personnel. I got too hung up on Jordan Whittington, which was stupid. I trashed Zach Charbonnet's talents, but dude, talent doesn't really matter too much when you're up against Skylar Thompson and you're going to get a 95%. That was so stupid on my part. So I may be a little too nitpicky on the chalk. Deontay, my guy, you kept bringing up your love of Gardner Minshew, and every single time I was like, yeah, but let's not sleep on Andy Dalton. I really like Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Deontay has been one of my guys so anyway, we're on to Cincinnati. We're going to leave this in the rear view mirror. I'm no longer shell shocked. I just needed that little vent session, and now we're good. We're going to crush this week.
Yeah. Juwan Jennings, man, that really put a damper on my big flag plant last week. Went really well. Romo Dunze was the guy that I kept talking about.
Oh, that's
Loved
right.
him last week. It went really well, but then Juwan Jennings just massively crushed him. I did have some lineups with both of them and still never even came close to winning a tournament last week. Just things did not come together quite the way we needed them to. So
yeah, I know Dunze and our other boy Naylor had a 40 or 20 yard touchdown callback.
30, yeah.
And Dunze was wide open multiple times, which would have been long touchdowns.
Yeah, so we came close to having some big plays hit in a big way. I mean, if we just played this exact Millie Maker lineup and just subbed out Justin Jefferson for Romo Dunze, we would have won all the money. So that's
how often do you daydream about that? Just let me just time travel.
Yeah, if I just knew
knowing this lineup,
too much. I daydream about it for best ball, for DFS, all this stuff. Like, man, if I just knew this at that time, happens all the time. But enough about week 3. Did not go well for us. I didn't even notice. Damn, Petty Theft finishing 5th in the Millie. Good for
Hey,
him.
Way to go. That's a sharp player right there.
Yeah, very, very sharp player. All right, we'll get back to week 4. Enough talk about week 3. And we're going to start with the quarterbacks. Only 2 quarterbacks who are double-digit projected ownership right now, both in the same game, Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray. How do you feel about the chalky quarterback, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. Jaden Daniels, my Exodia quarterback this year. The Commanders have not punted or turned the ball over since week 1. Insane. I wish I had something to add here. I'd just say Jaden Daniels feels kind of tricky to stack for me. And this is where it sucks. Like, I hate poking holes in the chalk when it's, a player I love, but it's,
I mean, this isn't even that chalky. So if you're just like, you feel okay with this number, you can say that too. Like, this is,
so here's what I will say. Here's what I will say. What is this? 33% ownership on a combined
35. Yep.
Thank you. Quarterbacks from the same game. You know who's a great leverage play? James Conner, Brian Robinson, who I love. So you got to keep that in mind. And I will say this is the best game from this week's slate. We all know that. The second best game by a hair, maybe. Like, I think this game maybe should have the highest over under of the slate. That's Carolina, Cincinnati. And you see Burrow 3, but you see Dalton buried. It's 2 of the worst defenses by EPA per play allowed. Really good pace of play now that Bryce Young is removed from the equation. High pass rate over expectation. And that excites me. The easiest hole to poke in Washington, Arizona is just the ownership. And then you're not really seeing it to the same degree, where if just that one game flops, huge edge to, getting the second best game right.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you're not really like out on these chalky quarterbacks. You think that the ownership is probably fine. 35% combined ownership for those 2. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't know. I don't see any major issue. Like, if they were getting 30% ownership, we're getting 30% to Jaden or something like that. At that point, I'd be like, well, there are definitely ways for this to flop. But I feel like the ownership is reasonable enough that I'm probably going to play some of it. But I'm very much with you on the Cincinnati Carolina. I've been doing some of that in battle royales. I think that game definitely has a lot of fun potential with how good Andy Dalton looked last week and how much he targeted Deontay Johnson. Like, you don't even need to, if you don't want to, you don't need to go to the other receivers on the team. Last week, Deontay Johnson had a 35% target share. The next best was like 11%, something really low. So don't necessarily even need to lean into the other options on the team. We'll talk about those options though more when we get to receivers and tight ends. How do you feel about Fields at 8%?
Yeah, I think it's solid. I think it's an absolutely great matchup for him. We haven't really seen him run as much as we kind of would have liked, but we know he has that skill set. The Colts are so bad. Like, no DeForest Buckner, especially. They can't get pressure. They have no secondary. I love George Pickens. We'll get to him. I love George Pickens this week. Obviously, the big concern is that no one told Arthur Smith that they legalized the forward pass. And so that's the concern for Fields and Pickens is, what if it's just a Najee game? Then again, Warren's out. Najee's banged up. It's probably a tougher matchup on the ground than no, probably not. With DeForest Buckner out, no. It's a sick matchup. But Debro, our boy Debro, who might even be in chat right now, made some good arguments on why he thinks Najee is bad chalk or a trap. I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, I like Justin Fields a lot.
Yeah,
stack is easy.
Would you? Since you mentioned George Pickens, I know we're not on wide receivers yet, but because it is sort of relevant to quarterbacks, to me, George Pickens is a play that I would be less inclined to play outside of a stack. Like, I think most of my George Pickens exposure will be with Justin Fields, just because if George Pickens has a big game, Justin Fields almost certainly has a big game, because Justin Fields is probably going to do a lot of damage on the ground. So if he also can support a receiver who does really well at a, like, not nothing, I think he's like 5,700 on DraftKings, like a big enough price tag. Like, so if George Pickens has a big game, to me, it feels very likely that that Justin Fields also has a big game. Would you agree with that? Or do you think that there is, kind of some space there for George Pickens to have a 25, 30 point fantasy game and Justin Fields to still fail?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're correlated together, and part of why I like Fields is because of my love of Pickens, but I'm very comfortable playing Pickens without Fields. Again, we worry about Arthur Smith, but this is the Drake London sort of role where, like, his share of the receiving XFP is, like, I don't know, easily top 3, maybe even number 1 right now. So, yeah, I a lot of volatility to this play, but I kind of want to lean into it. I just see a lot of slate breaking upside if the pass volume's there.
Yeah, definitely has that slate breaking upside. Any other quarterbacks standing out to you? I mean, CJ Stroud at 5%. Any interest there?
Yeah. The concern is no Tank. Nico, per my sources, my Houston sources are really good, is legitimately a game time decision. And that's not great. And like Edwin Porras, our injury expert, said, when a player pops up with this injury midweek, we only have 2 examples out of like 46 of the player actually playing. The good news is one of those weeks the wide receiver played was Julio, who scored 40 plus fantasy points. But yeah, that's a little concerning. I mean, if Nico, we knew, was fully healthy, would probably be the best wide receiver play of the slate. No Tank. He looks like Julio Jones 2.0 on film. It's the ideal schematic matchup. This is the one I had circled in my calendar for weeks. Jaguars defense, dude, is so stupid, so bad. It's like the old Greg Williams defense where you have like the safety so far back, he's barely not even on the field. And so you're playing 10 on 11 football. It's playing man coverage at the highest rate we've seen in like 5 years. It's so insane. Yeah. By the way, if Nico's out, Diggs is the best value wide receiver on the slate. Schultz would be a top 3 tight end play.
Nico, he did say yesterday that he's good to go for the week, for whatever that's worth.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I heard he was going to try his hardest to play, but it was close to a true game time decision as it gets. But
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's probably that changed yesterday because as D-Ro points out, it doesn't have an injury designation right now. So I would imagine that was earlier in the week.
Got it. Yeah, there's still the risk
feeling
though
better.
that he might
Yeah,
not be fully
absolutely.
healthy.
Or yeah, he could be limited, could re-aggravate. Like there's always that re-aggravation risk. But it's like as of right now, it appears that Nico is set to play. But definitely worth noting that Diggs would be awesome without Nico. I'll open it up to you at this point. Who are some other quarterbacks that you want to mention?
This is gonna sound gross, but I really like Caleb Williams. Like I know he stinks right now, but I don't think this is stinking on the same level as a Bryce Young. Like I don't even think it's close to that. The guy threw 52 times last week, where that's awesome for the receivers you would stack him with. That's like so many potential PPRs. He scored 23 DraftKings fantasy points. He gets the nuts matchup. The Rams probably have the worst defense in football. Like for wide receivers, I'm actually ranking them as being worse than the Commanders. And I've played the wide receiver one against the Commanders for like 20 straight weeks now, and it's never hurt me. It's only made me a lot of money. Nick Spinola broke down the argument in his Coverage Shells article. Is excellent. He argued it more convincingly, but it was the scheme. It works on a scheme level. It works on a pace of play. The top two teams by pace of play, by pass rate over expectation, all that stuff. So 5,600. No one's really playing him. Cheap and easy to stack. Good upside. I like him.
Definitely with you. I do wonder if the ownership comes up a little bit, just because I feel like every piece of content that I have been part of or consumed has mentioned Caleb as a pretty good under the radar play. I mean, some of that has been me because I'm super into Caleb. Fantasy Guru Drew was on one of those. Was on the cage match this week. He brought up that stack as well. So it seems like a lot of us are more into the Bears than the ownership would suggest. Which honestly, I still think the ownership projections are usually closer than if you just try and gauge what people are saying in content. So probably still does come in low owned. But I'm with you on Caleb. So now we just got news before the show. Keenan Allen also is apparently ready to go. So we're gonna have to talk about that a little bit. Who we want to pair up with Caleb this week.
So I'm not an injury expert. I just need to lean on the injury experts I have. I'm hearing probably limited on a snap count. It's plantar fasciitis, which is really concerning for a number of reasons. So yeah, I personally lean Rome. It's a zone heavy matchup where like if this were a fully healthy Keenan, like that would be the all-in spot to play, but I don't trust him at all. So I would go back to the well on Rome, and I kind of feel pretty good about it. Some other quarterbacks, I like Darnold. I mean, ranks fourth best in fantasy points per dropback on an offense that typically leads the league in dropbacks per game. He's only the 15th highest quarterback of the slate. Matchup looks tough, but I talked to Brett Whitefield, our film expert, about this, and he was like, based on my film study, like this is no longer a defense to fear. Like he's not saying they're bad, but just certainly versus public perception. And Vikings offense looks awesome. I think Malik Willis would be a great play if Jordan Love sits out, but I think Jordan Love's going to play. Baker Mayfield I like just because Mayfield doubles are live so often, and he's top 3 in EPA per dropback, fantasy points per dropback heading into last week. Eagles, they hurt me last week, but by some of the more advanced metrics, their secondary looks bad. It's pretty banged up as well. So I like that. I think Anthony Richardson deserves a shout. Like I know it's a brutal matchup and he stinks and he's like playing so badly and he's not even running enough, but that's an easy fix. It's just, have him run more. Like, why wouldn't you do that? That's stupid. And he could just drop 28 fantasy points in any given week. You did that week 1. And so just deserves a mention. There's a lot of guys like, I think this is a good week to I think I'm going to have most exposure to Andy Dalton and then probably the chalkier ones, but Fields up there. But Brock Purdy or Richardson or a Mayfield, some of these like super low owned guys I think are really interesting.
I think it's worth noting that Jair Alexander also didn't practice yesterday, so could be questionable.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes that might be a matchup that
missed that
people
one.
want to stay away from. But if Jair Alexander misses the game, that Debro pointed that out as well. That would be helpful for the Vikings. Also, if you want to go,
What is with all these
Justin
midweek
Jefferson.
injuries? This is a really tough week.
Yeah, it's been weird. I wonder. Packers didn't play on Monday. I'm trying to think of like, you know, the different scheduling with the 2 Monday games could be a factor, but I don't feel like the schedule is all that different this year. So honestly, no idea what is going on. So many injuries. The other one that I don't even think I wrote him up in my game by game breakdown is somebody I was considering. Multiple injuries though to the Chargers defense. I'm sort of interested in playing Mahomes. Probably not going to, but I don't know. He's coming in at just 4% projected ownership right now. Any thoughts on a 4% owned Patrick Mahomes?
Probably not. He hasn't exceeded 21 fantasy points since like, I don't know, early October of last year. And so I just no longer worry about the bury you upside. And like the same thing's true of like a Trevor Lawrence. He's exceeded 325 passing yards just twice in his last 50 games. This is something JM to Win talks about all the time, where it's like had to have it scores. And it's just like so easy to narrow down your pool, where it's like, okay, we haven't seen it in this amount of games, like just cross him off. And he's 7,100. So I'll wait to see it before, and I'm not really worried about him burying me. If he does, I can live with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I coming into the year, I really thought that the Chiefs were going to take a step forward in terms of Patrick Mahomes just throwing the ball a lot more, and that just hasn't really been the case. He's been kind of a letdown so far this year. Just thought he's at least worth bringing up. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about, or should we move on to running backs?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Yeah, I didn't have anybody else that I wanted to call out. Running backs, starting with the top of the ownership, we have Jordan Mason coming in at 30%. We actually have several chalky running backs on this slate. You can see here we have 6, 20% or more. Let's just briefly just touch on each one of them. Jordan Mason against the Patriots, 30% projected ownership at 6,700. How do we feel about that number?
Yeah, like I said, he doesn't catch passes, and he's sort of just a guy who, like, either he gets 100 yards and a touchdown and he hits value, but what if he gets 99 rushing yards? Or what if he doesn't get the touchdown? And so like that was when he's that chalky, there's a lot of credence to fading him, and he doesn't have like bury you upside, I don't think. But like as a cash play, yeah, he's awesome. He's great.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. He's the perfect cash play. Even cash, I actually went back and forth in cash. Ultimately decided that he probably is a cash game lock just because he projects too well to not be. But I'm like, if he's not involved in the passing game, like, doesn't that really raise your floor? Just like having those little PPR points. Yeah, I don't know, but 30%.
If he's that kind of surprises me. If he's really that high owned, I need to think more deeply on Brock Purdy stacks, because I haven't heard anyone talk about that. Part of the reasoning here is New England's been like the number one pass funnel in the league this year. Their run defense has been really strong.
Interesting. Yeah, so that would be a reason to stay away from Jordan Mason, potentially go the other way, get some leverage with the pass catching options. I like that. Najee Harris, 26% projected ownership against the Colts. You brought up Debro was sending some reasons to maybe not get overly excited about Najee Harris. It might be a trap. How do you feel about 26% going there?
No, I think it makes sense. We know Arthur Smith loves to pound the rock. It's an amazing matchup. No Jalen Warren. I think Cordarrelle Patterson's going to get a little bit more work than, we might want, although that might be mostly game script, and like Pittsburgh's only favored by 1.5 points. Like that feels low to me, but only favored by 1.5 points. Again, great matchup. Colts giving up a league high 179 rushing yards per game. But if Pittsburgh falls behind, Justin Fields vultures a touchdown. Maybe Cordarrelle Patterson gets like 70% of the Warren role. I could see him failing.
Yeah, definitely can see a path to failure there. This is also a week where I just have to say, doing the game by game breakdown, there were some running backs that I mentioned as targets in the first few games. I was like, yeah, the point per dollar projection looks so good on this running back. And then the deeper I got into it, there are just so many really good running back projections on this slate. You have just a ton of great point per dollar plays. And Najee Harris is one of those that, like, yeah, just looking at a glance, like, man, he projects really well point per dollar in a nice matchup. But then as you get into all the other running backs, it just seems like there are so many great spots this week that it's when you have this kind of ownership, I'd rather play the lower owned guys. But we'll get into some of those. Ryan Robinson, no Austin Eckler there, projecting for 21% ownership, salary of 6,100. So, we talked about potentially wanting to play it as a leverage piece, but 21% ownership going there as well. How do you feel about that number for Brian Robinson?
Yeah, I love Brian Robinson this week. I think we could see Jeremy McNichols spell Robinson a bit and play that Austin Eckler role. But I kind of want to bet against it. He only has 4 touches since 2022. This is a big narrative, was that like Cliff Kingsbury was always a running back committee guy, but whenever one of the two went down with an injury, the one running back would get like Christian McCaffrey type volume, like 95% snap share or better. And Brian Robinson, I think, is really good. I think he's really underrated as a pass catcher. He doesn't run a lot of routes, but he actually ranks 4th best among all running backs in yards per route run since the start of last season, behind only Kamara, CMC, and, believe it or not, Samaje Perine. And so you could say there's game script concerns. Arizona's favored by 3.5, but and like Robinson historically very game script sensitive, but I don't know. I kind of want to lean into the potential of him being a bell cow. I also, again, I just think he's like really underrated as a talent. I think he's pretty good, and this offense looks legit. So yeah, I like B-Rob a lot.
Do you think he gets more involved in the passing game with Austin Eckler out?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the big question. But I kind of want to lean into that just due to Cliff's tendencies and how good Robinson has been as a receiver when asked to play that role.
Yeah, no, I think it's a strong play. 21% ownership. I was hoping it would be a little bit more under the radar, but I do think this fantasy point projection that we have here, 19.1, is higher than I've seen elsewhere, which makes me hopeful that maybe it won't be quite as high as we're anticipating. Kyren Williams, so far this year, the Bears defense has been a little bit of a run funnel. At least some metrics that I looked at seem to have it as a little bit of a run funnel. You'd expect Kyren to get a good amount of work with both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp out. How are you feeling about Kyren Williams at 7,300?
Yeah, I get it. He has the exact same role as last year, if not even better, where you're talking about 90% of the snaps, 90% of the opportunities. He's featured inside the red zone. He led all players in red zone XFP per game last year. It's exactly the same this year, where it's like an order of magnitude above anyone else. And then without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, you saw McVay really feature him. I was talking up Jordan Whittington, and no. It's Kyren who's getting this featured role where, regardless of game script, they're giving him the ball. They're playing more 2 tight end sets to compensate for the offensive line concerns. I will say Chicago is favored in this. Williams very game script sensitive. But he's also, like, you could say he's $1,000 cheaper than he was at the end of last year in the exact same role. Personally, what confuses me most about this, and so you see Kyren, you see Brees, and you see Bijan, and they're all great plays. They're all uber bell cows in a redraft. Yeah, it's like, give me your top 5 running backs. They're all in there. I'm kind of surprised Saquon is so much lower than them, though, because he's been this year's CMC, not totally by volume. He only ranks 6th in XFP per game, but leads all running backs in fantasy points per game by, 26% more than any non-Kamara running back. He looks amazing. He's averaging 9 yards per carry. We're not seeing a ton of the tush push. We're seeing Saquon get those carries inside the 5. Buccaneers look like a great matchup. They're giving up the most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Kalijah Kancey's out. Vita Vea's out. And so Yeah, that's interesting to me. And so if, the guy who's producing like this year's Christian McCaffrey is that much more lower owned, I like that. I think you can make a case if AJ Brown is out and Devonta Smith is out, you could say something like Saquon or Goddard on every lineup.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable approach. Devonta Smith ruled out. AJ Brown, I think the latest I've seen is still questionable. That would be the concern. There would be, I guess, would you be worried about them just loading the box if both the star receivers out? Like nobody's afraid of Jahan Dotson. Would they just load the box against the Eagles?
I just don't know how great that strategy might be without their two stud defenders. And then if you're Philly, you're probably just loading the box right along with them,
Yeah.
Because you don't have AJ Brown, you don't have Devonta Smith, and this is the guy who's been destroying everyone.
All right, so we talked about all the. I guess you talked briefly about Brees and Bijan, just in the context of maybe Saquon is the pivot. So we've sort of touched on all of the chalk, and maybe I'll just open it up to you at this point. Who else do you want to talk about?
Aaron Jones, I like a lot. I know he's right there. Revenge game. You got a revenge game going. So this is my highest owned running back in best ball, Neil.
That's right.
We saw more of a gross split with Ty Chandler, but not really last week. Led all running backs in XFP, led in target share. And so, he deserves a shout. James Conner, we talked about. Again, it's, everyone's excited to play Arizona, and I don't blame them, but Drew Petzig, historically far more run heavy than Arizona ever gets credit for. He works his leverage off of 33% of all quarterbacks being played. It's a great matchup. Washington was the worst pass defense in football, but like solid against the run. So also like the number one pass funnel this year. Okay, maybe still the worst pass defense, but they're just as bad on the ground. So I could see it being a James Conner 2 touchdown game. Again, Brees Hall, Kyren, Bijan, Alvin Kamara. They're all really good plays. I don't know that I have anything unique to add there. Chuba Hubbard, I think, is interesting. Like I said, I like Andy Dalton a lot. And so if you like Andy Dalton, you should like Chuba. Through just the first 3 quarters of last week's game, he was a bell cow, 14 to 17 carries, 5 of 7 targets, scored 27.9 fantasy points. Bengals, they've given up the 4th most rushing yards per game this year. And then Zach Moss, I think, is interesting as maybe leverage off of Joe Burrow if you need it. Bengals have the 2nd highest implied point total of the week. They're favored by 4.5 points. And he's been a bell cow this year, 76% snap share that ranks 5th best. Not a ton of volume, not a ton of production, but those were all negative game script games. So maybe he fares much better this week. I think that's fine. I think that's interesting.
Are the coaches lying to us about the Bengal split? Because they keep on saying, oh, this is just a matter of like the flow of the game. It's a coincidence. It's a small sample size. It's going to be a split backfield. And then they just keep going back to Zach Moss every time. They just don't play Chase Brown. Do you think that's going to continue?
Yeah, I kind of do. I think Zach Moss is just so trustworthy and dependable. Yeah. Chase Brown is like the big play guy, but what comes with that is the league's worst success rate over the last 2 years. So that's what I think it is.
Debro did bring up the one play I really want to hear your thoughts on, which is Roschon Johnson, 4,100 against the Rams. They're saying they want to give him an extended look. Hard to interpret what that means, but at 4,100, do you think it's worth it to try to find out at 1% projected ownership?
Yeah, it's not just the 1%. It's also 4,100, where it's like, even if he sucks, that allows you to do some really interesting things. I think the Bears have the worst run blocking offensive line in football. At least that's what we've seen thus far. We've also seen them just totally abandon the run. But at a bare minimum, he's going to get all the goal line carries, so he could fall into the end zone. He could do us that solid that Cam Akers did for us last week.
The one funny thing about that, the reason I laugh is they say apparently that Khalil Herbert is their goal line back, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that is what the
is that what
Bears are saying. Yeah, they came out this week and said, no, Khalil Herbert is our goal line back.
Oh, God.
We want to give an extended
I thought it was the
look to Roshan
opposite.
Johnson. You would think it would be the opposite, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me circle back on that. But Roshan, like, if you look at the advanced numbers, he like leads all running backs over the last 3 years in rushing yards over expectation per carry, which is like a stat I think matters, but maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter as much as the fact that like the coaches hate him for some reason.
Right. It is bizarre. Debro says Roshan had more red zone snaps, 47% last week. Nick says he's doubting that Roshan has 1% with apparently Hilo and Rebar both mentioned him. We mentioned him. I think he's going to get some mentions. So probably 1% is going to be a little bit low, but my guess would still be sub 5%, just based on projections. He doesn't really looking around like the most used projections around the industry. Places still seem to have DeAndre Swift at least projected better. Roshan doesn't project extremely well. So I don't really think he gets too popular. Are you looking into the Bears running back quotes?
Yeah, you're right. That's so weird.
Yeah. And they have given they did give Khalil Herbert at least one goal line. I think a couple, because he scored one. I believe I saw him get stopped on another one as well. So I think it's true. I guess we could pull up the inside the 5 data on the Bears.
Well, how much is Khalil Herbert then? Oh yeah, I was getting them mixed up when I said the rushing yards over expectation per carry stat.
Okay. Khalil Herbert have now been 4,800.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably just not going to mess with this.
So you're out on Roshan? Even, I mean,
yeah, probably.
I think
Ramondre is maybe more interesting at 3%. I'm hearing Mixon probably plays this week, by the way.
Are you really? Okay.
Yeah, and so that's interesting as well.
That is interesting. At least
I have to write it up for Discord, but when it's official. But so I haven't dug too deeply into it. But
okay, I think I'm more into Roshan than you are, just because I don't know what an extended look means, and I think he is going to be super low owned, and I don't think there's any other great like 4,100 or cheaper running back option. So just to your point earlier, just what it allows you to do with the rest of your lineup. If he scores 9 fantasy points, I think that's probably good enough. Roshan, I also think it was being a pretty solid pass catching back. Let's see how much has he been used in the passing game this year? 9.6% target share. Yeah, not bad. I mean, 21, 37.5% route participation, 5 targets on the year. So if we do see an expanded role, I would think it would be in the passing game as well. I don't know. So I think I'm a little bit more into it than you are. But any other running backs you want to talk about?
Not really.
Okay. Yeah, I think we talked about the most interesting. I guess Jerome Ford, one that I'm sort of considering.
Yeah, I wrote him up, and then so you can't really say for certain in a 3-week sample, but it really looks like a committee by game script, where in like weeks 1 and 3 were losses. Ford was at like, I don't know, 90% snap share, just like hogging the backfield. And then week 2, he 33% XFP percentage. And so Cleveland, they are dogs, but it's only like a 1.5 point spread. That's a little too thin for me to feel much confidence, but I did write him up and then delete it. Ramondre, another guy I wrote up and then deleted.
Okay.
How much is Braylon Allen?
He's expensive. He is 5,400.
Yeah, never mind. If he was the same price as Roshan, I might have made an argument for him.
Yeah. All right. I think that is I believe Bucky Irving is currently expected to play. That the only other thing I would say is if Bucky Irving is out, I think Rashad White would be kind of a smash. I think he would probably go back to the usage he had last week. So that would be very interesting, but we'll have to wait on news there on Bucky Irving. Said he's going to play, but also didn't practice yesterday, I think. So we'll wait and see. All right, let's move on to some wide receivers. The chalk is Deontay Johnson. We just saw big time blow up game last week with Andy Dalton. I'm sure you love to see it, Scott, as you were one of, I think, Deontay Johnson's biggest proponents this offseason. And Bryce Young appeared to be tanking it for a little while. Now we are alive again with Deontay Johnson. How do you feel about the chalk there?
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. I'm
Yeah,
gonna eat all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a 40% target share last week in the second half following Adam Thielen's injury. Listen, this is like one of my all-time favorite players, all-time ass god. This is probably the best quarterback play of his career. I know that sounds insane, but it was Duck Hodges and a dusty Ben Roethlisberger and Mason Rudolph and and yeah, so less target competition without Thielen. It's a top 6 matchup. It's game over.
Yep. Great spot there for Deontay. I probably eat it. Like, I don't think I want to be much over the field here, but I would guess I get to right around 30%. Maybe I wouldn't be shocking if I end up over the field there. Nico Collins, we talked about that. We have some potential injury concern there. 7,200 against Jacksonville. Are you willing to go there even with the potential like re-aggravation worries?
Well, there's a lot of wide receivers I like this week. But I mean, that was obviously the first thing that stood out to me was just, oh my God, Nico Collins is going to go nuclear. This is like a horrible pass defense, missing their top cornerback, top safety, playing man at a higher rate than we've seen in like 5 years. And like Nico is super elite against man, no Tank Dell. And so, it really just comes down to to ownership and then the hamstring injury. And I'll say Stephon Diggs pops as a top value for us as well. If he's stuck in the same role, like the slot low ADOT role, there's a good chance he flops. I just kind of think you remove Tank Dell from the equation, all that changes, and maybe we see him used differently. And so, sort of like Juwan versus Ayuk, if Diggs is still up there in ownership, so maybe not. But I do like Diggs as well. But like I said, I get a lot of wide receiver plays for you, and some of them are spicier and at lower ownership.
Rashee Rice, 25%, just the final huge ownership kind of play. How do you feel about 25% going to Rashee Rice?
Yeah, this is my redraft Exodia, and now he looks like a mid-range wide receiver 1 for fantasy. I think he's just like such an easy lock for cash. The alpha number 1 with a crazy high target share for the best quarterback in football. If you want to be nitpicky here, I think you can for tournaments. He just has a 4.4 ADOT. That's something that is good for a median projection. But if you're talking about like break the slate upside or bury you upside or had to have it scores, maybe not that great. The total here is under 40. Chargers they've been a top 6 matchup against wide receivers this year. And so I certainly think there's credence to fading him for tournaments. But if you want to talk about like best values of the slate, he's certainly there. Yeah.
All right. Well, you said you have several wide receivers that you want to talk about. So I think we can just open it up. Tell me about some of your favorite receiver plays.
Yeah. So Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, should have at least the exact same ownership as Nico, maybe higher. This is just the nuts matchup that's never cost me money. It's only ever made me money, and that's wide receiver 1s versus the Commanders. I have a tweet. If you look at their last 16 games, it's every single wide receiver 1 gets 100+ yards and at least 1 touchdown. I think the only exception was one Patriots week. And outside of that, it hits every freaking time. Marvin Harrison Jr. 2 weeks ago scored 32 fantasy points in the first quarter. Last week, he led all players in XFP. I could bring up some nitpicky concerns on why I really like Elijah Higgins, which we can get to later. But yeah, he's 12% when he should be 25%. So love me some Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep. Hard to argue with that. Just it's worked so many times, and people are still letting you do it at low ownership. Feels like a good play. Other receivers that you like?
Well, we'll talk about George Pickens, and so this feeds into the tweet I had that went crazy, where it's like week 1 single high matchup shadowed by AJ Terrell. He ranks top 3 in ass. He had 4 catches of 30 plus yards, except 2 of those got negated due to penalty, but it was still like a 6 yards per route run day. Week 2 shadowed by Patrick Surtain, top 3 in ass, single high heavy matchup. And he again went crazy. And if you count like penalties that Surtain drew, and if you count plays negated, it was another like 9 yards per route run day. Week 3, 2 high heavy matchup against the Chargers. Week 4, back to single high. Indianapolis cornerbacks are trash, certainly nowhere near Patrick Surtain's level, AJ Terrell's level. If you look back since the start of last season, George Pickens against single high, which is going to see at a top 10 rate, is a top 5 wide receiver. He gets a 60% fantasy points boost against, or single high, actually 140% boost. And then cover 3, 60% boost, which they're going to play at the highest rate. If you go to the coverage matrix, you'll see that. So anyway, great schematic matchup, great on paper matchup. He's an ass god. And so I just think he's really good. I do worry about Arthur Smith, but I think he has he's going to drop an 188-2 game sometime soon. And if I could look at every single one of his next upcoming matchups, this would be the one with the best odds of doing it.
Yep. And coming in at pretty low ownership. Other wide receivers, Chase, are you playing Chase or Higgins against Carolina? Or Yoshivas, actually? Any what's your level?
Can we circle back on that?
Sure.
Another play I want to go all in on, but it just feels stupid. Or not stupid, just like stupid to say, for me to say that. It's like inherently risky because it's a tough matchup and there's a lot of volatility to Green Bay's wide receivers. You have this like weird rotation that's kind of hard to figure out. The guy's not playing in 12 personnel. I just think he's so good. And that's Jaden Reed, 6,000, 6%. I just think he's so good. If you look back over his last, 9 healthy games with Jordan Love, he averages 19.9 fantasy points per game. He leads all wide receivers in fantasy points per route run, fantasy points per over expectation. The only other wide receivers in the top 3 of either one of those stats are Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel. So you could be looking at like an outlier on that level. He's going to see a ton of too high coverage. But Reed is top 10 against too high. He's one of a few wide receivers who's like equally efficient against both. So I really like him.
Jordan Love is playing too, so that helps.
Okay.
They say they might mix in Malik Willis, it sounds like, for some plays, but we should have a good amount of Jordan Love also, which obviously only helps Jaden Reed. Is he the only Packers receiver that you think you play this week?
Yeah. But again, I absolutely love him. And he's only 6%. Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. I think Chris Godwin's definitely the better play on paper. I think he should be higher than 13%. This is the nuts roll. He's the Cooper Kupp of the Buccaneers. Eagles are getting destroyed by slot wide receivers this year. Avonte Maddox used to be really good. He is sucking ass this year. Jaden Reed destroyed them in week 1. Darnell Mooney destroyed him in week 2. And then Olave got all of his production last week in the slot. They moved him there for the advantageous matchup. Jalen McMillan's out. And so, yeah, I really like Godwin, but I also do like Evans. He's one of the guys popping an ass. Eagles rank bottom 5 in ass allowed. I have no idea if that stat is good or not, but I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. And yeah, I think Godwin's the better play, but I wouldn't want to sleep on Evans a little too bit. What is he at? Like 3%?
2%.
Yeah. So I think that's just an argument for Baker, which I did bring up earlier. I like Trey Tucker a lot. What are we showing on Trey Tucker?
Pretty high, 16% ownership.
All right. I was hoping ownership would go to Jacoby, but I do like him. I do like Drake London. I do like Darnell Mooney as values.
Not Ray McLeod.
Not me personally, no, but
Okay.
I could see it. I know where projections like Ray. Michael Wilson, I like. I made the argument for Marvin Harrison Jr., but it's still a great matchup for Michael Wilson coming off of a career high 9 targets. If we wanted to be nitpicky, I did say heading into the year, I think Harrison's going to struggle against 2 high. I think he's going to benefit from single high, and Michael Wilson much better against 2 high in his career, 140% boost. But this is me just wasting words. I'm just going to go crazy on Marvin Harrison Jr. due to the upside. Brandon Ayuk is interesting. Christian Kirk, I think is getting slept on. Romo Dunze, I really like 2%. Like I said, the same bet as what I was saying on Caleb Williams. But I mean, you can play Romo Dunze without Caleb. I think that's certainly fine.
What about DJ Moore? Is he same kind of thing or no?
I mean, I could definitely see either one or both hitting. It's just if you asked me to pick, I would go with a Dunze who really sort of like cucked him last week. Dunze had team high 11 targets, 234 air yards. If not for that fluky Hail Mary where it was like tipped by a defender and it fell in DJ Moore's lap, he would have just only had 34 yards. Odunze in the second half had a 60% air yardage share. DJ Moore had a 2% air yardage share. And so that would be my lean. There's a few more guys we can talk about, but I know we wanted to talk about Cincinnati as well.
Yeah, I do want to hear your thoughts on, I mean, the Bears is what I wanted to talk with you about. Cincinnati definitely, to me, seems worth talking about just because Carolina, very, very nice matchup here. Jamar Chase is 7,700. T. Higgins came in last week and was looking like he was in the T. Higgins role, like 95% route participation, 6 targets in his first game back. Yoshivas also had 7 targets in that game. So he's felt a little bit like he's getting bailed out by touchdowns, like not doing much other than scoring touchdowns, but they got him more involved last week. The coach speak was good this week. They say they want to continue to get Yoshivas more involved. He's earned the role, et cetera, and he's just 4,100. So it's a nice matchup. To me, all the prices seem pretty fair. How do you feel about the Cincinnati guys?
Yeah. So I was just asked by one of our subscribers about this. Could you play Dalton or Burrow without Chase? And I think the answer is no, but like, I'm considering it. Like with Carolina, if Dalton gets there, it has to be Deontay, in my opinion. Maybe you could bring Tommy Tremble into it if you want, but
that's actually, while you bring them up, I think Jonathan Mingo is something that we need to at least touch on because he's projected for, I guess 10% ownership here is not that crazy. He's popping in some like optimal lineups, and I don't know, 33%, 10% ownership, 3,300. Jonathan Mingo, I feel like we have to at least like touch on that. How do you feel about Mingo?
Yeah, I'm never going to play him.
Okay.
Good. Do me a favor, pull up advanced receiving, and then in the search bar, type in Bengals while I'm saying this. But yeah, with Cincy, there are more mouths to feed. Like you have you have T. Higgins. Like what if T. Higgins is just like actually fully healthy and back? You have Andre Yoshivas, an ascot, a small sample ascot, who's now in the slot full time, which is where he belongs. He led the team in XFP last week. Trenton Irwin was a healthy scratch. All right, now look at end zone targets. You have Mike Gesicki, who leads all tight ends in yards per route run. He's only running a route 50% of the time, but like he's been insanely efficient with that. And then you have Zach Moss. I made an argument for Zach. So there's like different pathways where Bengals could hit and it's not Chase. I don't think I could bring myself to do it, especially with me being a little concerned that T. Higgins isn't quite at 100%. We've seen him play a lot and suck by just not doing anything. And like whenever that's the case, Chase is just really the alpha, and it's a great matchup for all these guys. So I don't know. It's tricky to me. So here's an interesting thing. I don't know if this is just fluky or what, but you see 8 combined end zone targets for Yoshi and Irwin. Irwin's going to be a healthy scratch this week. So Yoshi, I think, is a really good value. Maybe this is a real roll for some reason. But that's good XFP right there. He's cheap. No one's on him. So he's someone I'm sprinkling into my Dalton Burrow teams. But the question I was asked, and the question I'm going to ask you, Neil, is can you play Dalton or Burrow without Chase?
Definitely you can play Dalton without Chase. Burrow without Chase. Man, AJ Brown just ruled out, by the way, so we might want to touch on some Philly guys, I guess. Burrow, probably not. Maybe if you think. Do we have any concern about like JC Horn? I guess I haven't looked.
No, he stinks this year. He's terrible.
Okay. Just that was a thought for like, what if JC Horn can stop him? I don't know. Just sort of wish casting a reason. It's thin, but I think you can actually. I think with T. Higgins and Yoshivas both there,
maybe for a milli, right?
In a milli, yeah, exactly. Like for the large field stuff, I probably wouldn't do it in a small field contest. Probably just play play Chase in those cases. But yeah, it's thin, but in a milli, I think you can do almost anything. So I guess in a milli, viable. Man, the Eagles, what is going on? Both AJ Brown and Devonta Smith both out. We talked about Saquon already. So now, does this make you more or less inclined to play Jalen Hurts without his star receivers? Should be more concentrated, you'd think, to the other receiving options, but also I don't think they're that good. So probably a fade. I don't know. How do you feel about the Eagles?
No, like I said, not playing Hurts. I think you can make a rule that's just about like one of Saquon or Goddard in every lineup. This is one of the most condensed, concentrated offenses in football. That's why we loved it so much. We loved Hurts doubles. And so you take one guy out, the guy with the biggest pie, you take another one out. I really do see it just being most likely probably the Saquon show, but could also be the Goddard show. Could be both.
I mean, Jahan Dotson.
No. I could see it, but you're talking about a guy who has run 90 routes and he's
so
targets. Bad. Yeah.
I made a bet with my friend prior to the season. My friend traded in our unlimited keeper league, traded Jahan Dotson to his brother, both in the league. So the conversation with both of them, traded Jahan Dotson for a draft pick that was like not a last round pick. It was a like reasonably high draft pick. And I said, I don't think Jahan Dotson ever makes your lineup. And if he does, he's never going to score 10 points for you. So we made a bet, just a beer bet on whether my friend's brother is ever going to play Jahan Dotson and score at least 10 fantasy points. This is the week. He actually sent us a text showing he's going to start Jahan Dotson this week. I'm moderately scared just because you'd think he's going to be targeted quite a bit, but still not that scared because Jahan Dotson is just really bad. So I don't know. It's hard to evaluate because we don't really know what the ownership is going to look like now with AJ Brown out. Like that obviously changes what you'd expect the Jahan Dotson ownership to be. What is your level of interest, if any, in Jahan Dotson, Paris Campbell, or Johnny Wilson?
Yeah, I'm personally just not going there. I
think that's reasonable.
We've never seen any of these guys used at all, right?
So you think they really do just concentrate the lineup?
That's what I'm saying.
Saquon and Goddard, and just don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough spot because I feel like Paris Campbell to me at 3,000 is like, all right, that's sort of interesting. You'd think he's probably going to run all the routes this week. Jahan Dotson, a tougher pill to swallow just because he is actually a little bit more expensive. If he were 3,000 out of it, but he's 5,000, still not going to project that crazy high, I wouldn't think. All right, so I guess maybe not going to be a focal point even with the star receivers out. Hard to really want to play any of them with any confidence. All right, so we talked about the Bengals, talked about most of the teams we wanted to. Terry McLaurin, what's your level of interest in 8% owned Terry McLaurin?
I don't know. I Arizona's been sneaky good against the deep ball, and that's like all that McLaurin has shown us thus far. The usage is horrible. It's Cliff Kingsbury leaving him alone on an island, not scheming him up for anything. And so I didn't write him up. Schematically, it's like a Zach Ertz game. If you want to get a Noah Brown, even like I can't get excited about that with, like I said, the concern about them being stout deep. Yeah, Ertz revenge games scheme, but you know, I don't think Ertz is ever really going to hurt you. So I'm not all that eager to play him.
We do have to talk about. I claimed last week that I am now the Shaheed Whisperer, but I'm gonna give you the title back. I think you're still
you stole my powers, dude. I can't believe it.
I'm gonna give you your powers back. Just one week that Shaheed just dropped multiple potential touchdowns and didn't get there. But this week we have Chris Olave, I think pretty likely to be out with the hamstring injury popping up yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think we could see a little bit more usage go to Rashid Shaheed. To me, it makes him only a slightly better play than usual, just because he was already like running most of the routes, seemed to be pretty high up there in usage. He just, to me, is always going to be kind of a boom bust play. Do you see it differently? Do you think that Rashid Shaheed becomes a bigger priority if we do get news that Chris Olave is ruled out? Would he be somebody that you want to jam into your lineups?
Yeah, so I punted this in my article. I'm just gonna give our Discord an update. I don't really know. It's really tricky to me. I keep going back and forth. I mean, you can make the argument the dude, had like a 12 or 18.9 yards per route run the first 2 weeks in the first half when the games were competitive, and now Olave is out. And so maybe he's no longer just this elite deep threat, which he is, but now he's also getting these screens and shallow crossers he could house and is more involved in this way and that way. You could say, yeah, maybe Scott's thesis on New Orleans is right, but their offensive line is in shambles, and that's always been an issue for Carr. And Shaheed's routes take longer to develop, so it really hurts him. I don't know. I need to get something to Discord tonight or tomorrow morning, but it's a tricky situation. All these random wide receivers picking up hamstrings on Thursday threw me for a loop.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough week with all the injuries popping up. And then there's so many that it's hard to decide who to prioritize. 2% ownership feels good. My guess is that the ownership on Shaheed comes up with Olave out too. The other game that I really want to get your thoughts on is we talked about the Houston side of the Houston-Jacksonville game. To me, the Jacksonville receivers, you did mention Kirk earlier, but I'm sort of interested in Brian Thomas Jr. also. We'll talk about Brenton Strange maybe when we get to tight ends. I think Gabe Davis also looks okay, but we talked about last week that was something that you talked about a little bit, is that the Texans secondary, I think of the Texans defense as being pretty damn good, but the secondary has been exploitable. We saw them get exploited a little bit last week. Is this going to be a matchup? Do you think that the Jaguars are capable of exploiting an exploitable secondary?
Yeah, again, I am a Trevor Lawrence hater, a Doug Peterson hater, and I'm still waiting to be proven wrong on that. And haven't been proven wrong. But I really do like this matchup. By ass aloud, Houston looks really bad. BTJ is a little interesting. Like, I wonder if Stingley plays him the same way he played Adonai Mitchell, who like almost broke the ass scale. He was just really aggressive and he just kept getting beat. But yeah, one of these wide receivers could go off because it's just like a great matchup. I think Jaguars are going to go crazy pass heavy. If I had to pick one, to me, it's Kirk. And maybe Jacksonville's outside corners have been worse than the slot this year. But historically, DeMeco Ryans, his defenses are exploitable with the slot historically. Kirk coming off of a really nice game, 8 for 79. His first read target share doubled. And so like one of the advantages fantasy points has over other sites is we have the coverage shell matchups and we dig into that. So Houston plays cover 4 at the league's highest rate. Last year, Christian Kirk ranked second among all wide receivers in yards per route run against cover 4. He's cheaper than BTJ. So for me, that's what gives him the edge over the other guys.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just pulling this up. This is a good reminder to the people. You can, if you want access to the Fantasy Points data suite, you can use promo code OTB25 to get 25% off. You can also see the little box in the bottom left-hand screen. If you scan that, you'll go straight to the options to purchase the data suite. I think it is the best tools. I mean, it's been all over Twitter this week. Kind of has been a talking point this week. How much better the Fantasy Points data is than other sites.
Yeah, we started naming names here. It was just time. It's like we're objectively better. Like not just that, we're right where other people are wrong. Like if you're using targets per route run or yards per route run or route share from PFF, it's just like objectively wrong. They count blocking on a screen or run blocking in an RPO as a route. And so like Jake, who used to chart for PFF, put out like a chart. He was like, look at all these mystery routes or ghost routes where it's like they have Travis Kelce running 8 more routes per game. And if you look into it, it's like, oh, why does he have a 0.0 target per route run on these mystery routes? Because they're not routes. And so that's just one way. There's like, dude, I'm the director of Dank Stats, right? I'm the mayor of Dank Statsville. And so like we're data purists. We really think long, hard, deeply about this. We put a lot of work into it. We have like an excellent charting staff. One of our charters was a scout with the Browns for 10 years up until a few months ago when he joined us. Yeah, it's just the best data. We're adding to it continually every other week. We're improving upon it. We have a really strong process, and yeah, this will be our pitch for Fantasy Points. Use code OTB25. You get 25% off any product. I could talk about how good our content is, how good Ryan Heath is, how good our data is. But like, it's also like the people who run the site. Like there's no suits. I'm the CEO. I'm wearing my pajamas right now. You can't see it, but I drive a 14-year-old Honda Civic that doesn't have AC, and I live in Houston. And all the money we get, we're just going to put back into having the best product, like helping our subs destroy everyone else in all their leagues and in DFS. All the money that we get from data, we're just going to build it to. We invented ass. Well, just wait till we see what we do next year with cornerbacks or edge rushers. We're all just a bunch of people who are obsessed with fantasy. We love it. The owners are all just like me, Joe, Graham, John Hansen. There's no outside investors. There's no hedge fund. And yeah, we're just a good group of guys. So if you want to join the team, code OTB25, I'll see you in Discord.
Yeah, worth supporting the team, but also just the best data out there.
Yeah, the best. Maybe that's the best.
I love all the different data, and it's all separated. You can see at the top here just
one thing I want to say though, this is like one of my favorite tools. This is the coverage. What is this? The wide receiver.
This is the wide receiver coverage matchup tool.
Yeah. This is one of my favorites, but we don't trust the sample size until we get 4 or 5 weeks of data. This is true of schedule adjusted as well. Yeah. And so so Derrick Henry in September averages 3.8 yards per carry. In October, he averages 4.1 yards per carry. In November, he averages 4.6 yards per carry. In December, he averages 5.8 yards per carry. And so like, if you look at my results as a DFS player, it's like mediocre. And then like week 5 hits, when I get access to all these tools, it goes, whew. And so for props too, this thing has just been absolutely killing props. So it says at the top, week 4 or week 5, we're going to update for 24 data, and it's going to get a lot better.
Yep. Week 4, it says. So
nice.
I'm guessing next week we'll see the update for the newer season data. Yeah, it's definitely, I think it makes sense to wait until week 4, because it's just, we're working with such a small sample size. It'll still be obviously a small sample size next week, but it's at least robust enough to want to start thinking about it. And then deeper into the season, it's just going to get better and better. All right. Back to wide receivers. Any other? And I noticed that at least again, we're based on last year's data. We did have this looks like a Rashid Shaheed game based on last year's data, was 10th in the expected fantasy points per route. So that is worth noting there. Jawan Jennings also looked good in that metric. He's 5,600 now, projecting for just 4% ownership. Is he somebody that you like? Is it going to be back to back for Jawan Jennings? You said you want to think about the San Francisco passing game a little bit more. Would it be through Jawan Jennings, Ayuk, possibly Debo back, Kittle back this week? Who do you think?
I think it's Kittle. It's tough. It's just really tough, and there's clearly upside here. If Jawan Jennings can drop a 50 burger, there's upside for anyone, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm placing my bet on Kittle, but like, just know that there's not a ton of certainty in that. And so you could really do whatever you want. But we saw Jennings last week sort of used as Kittle, just like with like operating in the middle of the field, running routes that Kittle runs, just with way more volume than Kittle typically gets. And so I don't know. I think Kittle coming back hurts him. Ayuk, you can make a really good case for, I'm sure he's annoying the crap out of Kyle Shanahan. Like, I want the ball. Have you seen my ass? A beat writer asked Kyle Shanahan at Ayuk's ass. Like, we made it. And it's a perfect schematic matchup for him. That's something that's always been really true of the 49ers wide receivers, which has been like a cheat code for us, is like, okay, Debo versus two high, Ayuk versus single high, Debo versus zone, Ayuk versus man. Really, really easy for us. And don't forget CMC still out. So like it condenses the pass volume. But so the Patriots have Christian Gonzalez. He's pretty good, but I kind of just trust Ayuk in single high against anyone more than I worry about the cornerback matchup. He sees a 28% increase in fantasy points per route run against man versus zone, similar in single high. Leads all wide receivers in ass, so I think he's separating. I think what I'm going to do is just go Kittle and then maybe make some Purdy lineups. He's not in my article. I kind of just the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of into it. I think that's what I would do.
All right, so Kittle maybe the play there. Did you see? I wonder if the ass conversation is what led to Brandon Ayuk taking his shorts off at practice yesterday. Did you see the
He's trying to show everyone his ass.
He's showing everybody's ass.
He's got the best ass in football.
Best ass in football. He heard it. He was like, "I got to show everybody. Here's my ass." So thank you for that, Brandon Ayuk. Any other? I mean, Justin Jefferson, I feel like always deserves a. We talked about this matchup. You said you want to play Darnold. I assume you want to play Justin Jefferson in your Darnold lineups.
Yeah, listen, if there's no Jari, that's really big to me. That's really big.
Currently questionable, so we'll see tomorrow if Alexander is playing. Any other receivers that you want to call out, or should we move on to tight ends?
I don't think so. I just want to circle back again on Marv.
Oh yeah,
Pickens, Jaden Reed. Those are kind of my flag plant plays. And then I obviously the chalk is good. I think I had Godwin as a cash play too, so I think he's going a little under.
Marv, Pickens, Jaden Reed, maybe Godwin. Okay, so yeah, it's good to circle
Where's
back.
my article? Let me see if I'm missing anyone.
All right, you want to? Yeah, you can pull that up, and I'll wait a minute before.
And then eating the Deontay chalk, of course.
Oh yeah,
but also Collins and Rasheed are nice, or Diggs if not Collins.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. Talk about some tight ends here. Dallas Goedert, the best projection on the slate, the highest ownership on the slate, I guess also tied for the best projection on the slate. Brock Bowers gets a little bit of a bump with no Devontae Adams, no Michael Mayer there. Projects just a little bit worse than Goddard, and Goddard is cheaper. No extreme chalk here. Only three getting 10% or more in Goddard, Bowers, and Tommy Tremble. How do you feel about the tight ends at the top here?
I think this is actually a really good tight end week. I think Dallas Goedert can go nuclear. We saw it last week, and it wasn't just like the typical 4.0 ADOT role. It was like he was like a featured. He was like almost the Cooper Kupp role, right? And so it's also a great matchup for him. Antoine Winfield is out. Buccaneers bottom 5 on paper. I think they have a few more injuries. Just super condensed offense. Loses 2 of their top guys. He had a 50% target share last week after Devonta Smith went down. Brock Bowers, this is the best tight end prospect of all time. No Devontae Adams, no Michael Mayer. Ryan Heath was very nitpicky of this schematic matchup, which I get, but I'm just going to throw that out. It's
Small
best
sample
tight
size.
end prospect ever. He's top 3 in yards per route run right now. His route share is going to jump from 63% to 95%. He's going to get a ton of first read targets, a ton of screens. Goddard, I worry about the upside bearing me more than Bowers for sure. And I also would have Elijah Higgins right there. This is like you can't be too confident in it, but I just see a lot of upside, especially at that price. They have Tip Ryman, who's like just like a blocker. But after Trey McBride went down, it was Higgins who ran 4 of the potential 5 routes. He saw 2 targets on those 4 routes. He's super athletic. He had a 110.6 speed score. He was also a wide receiver in college, which is exactly what you want to see. A pass catching tight end. He had over 700 yards his final season at Stanford. And I just think tight ends are just such a crucial component to this Arizona offense. Only twice over their last 20 games did tight ends combine for fewer than 8 targets. So 3,100. I like the upside a lot. I think that's a strong play right there.
Yep, I like that call out as well. Brenton Strange, 12 targets over the past 2 weeks, filling in for Evan Ingram. Seems to me like a pretty solid play.
Yeah, not just that. 83 air yard or 160 air yards over the last 2 weeks, easily most among tight ends. 6 targets per game. Like he's getting top 6 tight end usage volume, even though the route share is not actually there, but whatever. 3,100. I think he's a great value.
Debro brings up Pat Freiermuth, who I've noted, if you look at split it down by week, had his best usage last week for the Steelers. So if you wanted to play some Justin Fields, or even if you don't,
so I don't know that I mentioned him on this show, but Ryan Heath was all over Pat Freiermuth prop bets last week. And it over under was 25. It looks like he got 33, but he also had like a 30-yarder called back. And yeah, that's the single high, 2 high thing. And I honestly think like Arthur Smith might be aware of this because like this is what happened last year with like Jonnu Smith ranked top 3 among all players against some coverage shell, and like it just hit every single week. And you hear him talk about it where it's like, why didn't we do this? It's because, well, we were cognizant they have their best player and we weren't going to let him beat us. So we did this. And so I think he really does play matchups. And so I don't know, Pat Freiermuth, 2 high coverage, George Pickens, single high coverage. So it's a single high friendly matchup against bad corners. I'm just all in on Pickens, but could happen. And then the other tight end I really like is George Kittle, like I was saying.
Yeah. We already talked about.
Go ahead.
I was just saying we already talked about George Kittle a bit. Do you have anything else you wanted to say there?
Yeah, and so Juwan Jennings feasted in the George Kittle role last week. I'm going to hype up Kittle every single week. I do worry about this injury. And also, what's up with Trent Williams?
I don't know what the latest is there. Let's see.
So I'm assuming he plays. If not, it might make me rethink this because I assume if he's out, they're just going to have Kittle block a shit ton. Yeah, I like Kittle every week because he has insane upside at an otherwise dead position. Over his last 14 games, he averages 23 DraftKings fantasy points per game in his top 50% of those games. So basically, every other time you play Kittle, he breaks the slate. Or like for a tight end, like that's basically break the slate sort of production. And we also know without Deebo Samuel, he goes from averaging like 12.4 fantasy points per game to 20.3. So, again, there's underrated upside from this 49ers team. I kind of like Kittle the most. Christian Gonzalez on Ayuk. I guess that's another thing to mention.
Beat writer Eric Branch, Niners beat writer, says Trent Williams questionable with a toe injury, not moving well in practice as of today. So maybe looking like.
All right, well, keep an eye on that. This is such a tough week. There's like so many variables you have to consider.
Yep. As people have noted in chat a few times, Rashad White, as of today, added to the injury report with an illness.
What is going on?
So I was waiting for Bucky Irving to be ruled out. Now maybe Rashad White is being ruled out. So at some point, yeah,
be on the lookout for it when you pull up the DraftKings. It's if you sort by running back, wide receiver, tight end, it's just everyone questionable at the top. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Other tight ends that I wanted to get your thoughts on. Dalton Schultz last year had like a nearly 16% target share as the third option in the passing game with Tank Dell out, with Nico Collins potentially out. You'd think he should have closer to the target share he saw last year. Any interest in $4,100 Dalton Schultz?
Yeah, if Nico's out, he has a top 3 play. Definitely don't like him as much as the other 4 we've been talking, and Brenton Strange I've been talking about otherwise. Tommy Tremble is fine. Kobe Parkinson's fine. Mike Gesicki's fine. Zach Ertz is fine. Tyler Conklin's fine. But I really like those top 4.
Okay. I thought Drew said earlier, Tyler Conklin, no Tyler Conklin this week. I don't know if he meant there's an injury that I missed. No, I don't see anything on Tyler Conklin. So I just want to make sure that we didn't have some injury news there. Okay. All right. Any other, is that all the tight ends you want to talk about? Travis Kelce, I guess that's the other one I kind of want to hear your thoughts on, because that's sort of a narrative thing where it's like you hear a lot. I keep on hearing people say he actually looks pretty good. He doesn't look as bad as this is Brown's Conklin. Doesn't look as bad as like the numbers are for Travis Kelce. I don't know. He's
I guess it depends on who you ask. I was listening to the Ringer Fantasy podcast. Danny Kelly's one of the best film guys. He says he looks like trash. One of our charters 2 weeks ago said he's just like, it looks like he kind of just doesn't care. He's also in like 2 weeks, he's going to be 2 years older than Zach Ertz. Can you believe that?
No way.
Yeah.
That's not how you think of him.
And so this is like another thing too, where like PFF, if you look at Kelsey's route share, it's like 70%. If you look at ours, it's like 55%, because again, it's a lot of blocking on screens for Rashee Rice and some of the other guys. I just can't do it. I'm going to need to see him beat me. And if he does, I can very easily live with myself.
All right.
It really looks like Rashee just totally cucked him and out alphaed him and is the new number 1 in the old Kelsey role. I get it's still Kelsey, but yeah, it just, I like those top 5 tight ends I talked about, and I rattled off like Gesicki and some other guys with upside. So I just don't want to pay up for Kelsey.
I pulled this up for D-Bro because he asked for it. The separation score, Kelsey's separation score does look good. Third on the team. And if you remove, Justin Watson, I guess 44 routes, but Sky Moore, I don't think that really, we care about that. The route's so low. So far this year, at least the separation score, the ass on Travis Kelce, not looking too horrible. So there are some positives there. All right.
That's the thing is like, dude, Zach Ertz is just dust, but like he still separates well. He'll give you nothing after the catch, but like that's important, is like knowing where to find the soft spots in zone, and like being a route technician, like you'll age more gracefully. Like look at what Keenan Allen's done. He could still definitely get open, but for me, it's what about everything after the catch? And like, I think Noah Gray like only has like 1 fewer target. Like I really do see them trying to preserve him for the playoffs. So yeah, not really on my radar.
All right. Are we, any other tight ends you want to talk about here? Is Eric all a thing for DFS?
I kind of like Gesicki. Like, dude, if you just look at advanced receiving tight ends and you look at efficiency, make sure you throw like a 50 route qualifier on. It's just like he's blowing everyone up. He's only a part-time player, but like he's been insanely good. And so I would lean more towards him. But maybe it's Eric All's time eventually. But still, again, I feel strongly about those top 5 tight ends I mentioned.
Okay. You say, what do you want the...
what are you doing? No.
I'm in the wrong spot. You're in the wrong spot. You say...
wrong spot again. I mean, you can do it this way.
I thought this is the way you do it here. Okay. What's the minimum routes?
Greater than... Oh, you're doing separation score stuff. I said advanced receiving. Whatever. Here's the stat.
Oh, you're right. You did. All right.
Mike Gesicki, 2.69 yards per route run. Clearly head and shoulders above everyone else at like a bad position. Fantasy points per route run, targets per route run. Don't worry about it, but it's just probably not a great play with, Higgins getting healthier and only a 50% route share, but he deserved a shout out.
Thank you to Chris Ostro says stop bullying Neil. Yeah, I mean, I just kind
right.
of folded under the pressure there. I'm shaking over here. It was too much for me. I couldn't.
It's not my fault, guy. He's just too bullyable.
I am. I'm pretty bullyable. All right. Any other tight ends, or should we move on? Make some lineups.
Let's make some. That's what the people want. Yeah. You're just trying to drag this show out to be 2.5 hours.
I want it to be as long as possible. I'm trying to set records for. Oops, I just clicked on something wrong there. All right, let's see. What did I click? I was trying to click the Millie thing and then classic. All right, there we go. Let's draft some teams. And we decided that we're going to do, you draft the first team, I draft the second team, and then we draft a team where we go into it a little bit more, try and find plays that we both like. So let's start with your team. Who do you want to be the stack?
All right. I need to take a deep breath here. Like I said, we were doing all the micro stuff.
Yeah.
And then you flip the switch, you turn your brain on to macro level stuff, building a smart lineup. Okay, I can do it. All right, let's do Dalton plus Deontay.
Dalton plus Deontay. Okay. Pretty inexpensive. Dalton down at 5,300. Deontay 56, I believe. Okay.
Let's do a Marv and B-Rob mini stack.
Okay, 5,100 left per player.
Wait, go back to wide receiver. I just want to see all the Qs. You can scroll all the way up.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Look how gross that is.
Not just Qs. Out.
Yeah,
yep. Just.
Yikes. All right. So that's some nice correlation. Do we want to do Saquon or Goddard?
Saquon, I think.
Saquon.
I mean, we could do both.
No.
We just think that all the usage goes to those two.
Let's do Yoshi. Chase. Oh, can we afford it?
Probably not. Maybe if we go to min price.
Let's see.
Tight end and defense. Let's see. It's only 7,700.
All right, let's do Higgins.
Oops.
Hey.
Falcons, Broncos against the slow-paced Jets, Patriots. I don't know.
Hold on. Yeah, keep it there. Let's see. Let's do Falcons. Worried about Carr's offensive line. That would be the justification. Falcons pass rush has been good.
All right, so we have the Dalton single stack with Deontay Johnson. We have the bring back of Jamar Chase and Andre Oshris, double bring back there. We have the Elijah Higgins correlated with Brian Robinson. Got Saquon in there. Looks like a strong, well correlated lineups with a lot of really solid plays here. I think this is a lineup that could win. I think this could be the Millie winning lineup this week.
Wait, hold on.
So let's not play it. Let's hold on and let's play a completely different lineup instead.
Hold on. 2 Cardinals. What does swapping Harrison out for Rasheed or Nico? Does that interest you at all?
We can do that. I like both Rasheed and Nico quite a bit.
But I also really like Marv. But we have Higgins. So help me out here. Nico and then go up to Vikings D.
Yeah. Any concerns about having Jordan Love back for the game?
Or Eagles D, where it's stacked with Saquon?
Oh, yeah. That's good. I like that quite a bit.
Vikings also look like they have the best defense in football, though. So it's your call. Yeah, I feel like you're the correlation guy, so you're going to want Eagles. I'm cool with it.
I think you're right. I think I am the correlation guy, so that would be my preference there.
All right.
Yeah,
We just
like
swapped off $1 million, but
we did swap off $1 million, but
it's
this one correlates
better,
slightly better,
which is more important. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So now if I'm leading here, and you may recall that last week Scott bullied me even on my own lineup, didn't allow me to take the players I wanted to take. But this week, no, I'm not going to take the bullying. I am going to play whoever I want to play. Nothing Scott can do to stop me. And I'm just going to start with the one that I think I'm the highest on relative to where Scott is, and that's Roschon Johnson.
Whoa.
So I'm not going to go there immediately.
Worst offensive line in football, negative game script, and not even getting the goal line work. Okay. All right.
Involved in the passing game, expected to get an extended look against a terrible defense.
What does extended look mean, Neil? Huh?
It means he's going to be the bell cow. He's going to get the entire four quarters is an extended look.
And he doesn't need goal line carries if he's breaking off 50-yard runs. So
exactly. So you get it. All right, you've come around. Glad you've totally come around to see things my way. The toughest part for me with Roschon is that there are so many strong running back plays this week that it's hard to go with the guy, because he, even if he is the best point per dollar play, he could just be up against 3 running backs who put up 30 plus fantasy points, and it's still not good enough. But I want to go there. I want to try something a little bit unique there. Let's see, wide receivers. It is tough to get away from Deontay, but I do really like some other wide receiver plays on the slate that I want to think about here. You know what? I'm gonna do the Houston stack with a Jacksonville bring back. I think that's what Roschon allows you to do, is to go with CJ Stroud. Coming off a tough loss last week, I could see Houston keep their foot on the gas a little bit longer after that tough loss last week. So I think
one concern with Stroud. So like Ryan was all over this, is like, oh my God, perfect schematic matchup. Jacksonville defense, terrible. They're terrible everywhere except they have a good pass rush, and Houston's offensive line has really failed them this year. And that's really what Stroud's Achilles heel has been. I'm just mentioning, like, I think this is a fine lineup. I don't think it changes anything, but if he fails, I think that's the way, that or Nico's health, I guess. But
yeah, no, it's definitely a good note there. I'm going to try it anyway, just because Jacksonville is so bad. But yeah, you can poke holes in it.
And you're going BTJ over Kirk, huh? All right.
Only because I think he's going to be much lower owned. To me, those two are a toss up, and if I need the $200, I'm going to swap down to Kirk. But I think BTJ being so much less owned, they seem to want to get him more involved. Last week, he was targeted, I think, 9 times last week. So I think it's kind of things are moving in the right direction for Brian Thomas Jr. going forward. I think
he's in your defense. So he had 9 targets. Kirk had 10 targets. Kirk's matchup was way better last week. This is a generational slot funnel. Buffalo, like, elite on the perimeter, and they have some injuries to slot cornerback, linebacker, safeties. And so it was good to see Brian Thomas that heavily involved, and, like, don't worry about the lack of production. It was the worst possible matchup, and you would have liked to see more from Kirk. So yeah, I think that's totally fine. Someone's telling me to let Neil cook. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got to let me cook. Come on.
Myself. Yeah.
And Debro in chat telling me it's Kirk week. I mean, you guys are just trying to. I'm trying to, galaxy brain here, and you guys are all just giving me the better plays. But I'll think about swapping down to Kirk. I do like Kirk this week, by the way. You just played. No, you played the Falcons defense in the last one. I could go to the Saints here.
No, we ultimately moved to the Eagles.
Oh, we did, which I think is a solid play. I think I just go cheap here. This is really tough. I can't decide on any defense that I actually like this week. Maybe the Bucks.
Oh.
Just because the Eagles are so banged up. I don't feel great about that, though.
That's okay.
I'll probably.
Well,
I'll
Buccaneers D is actually super banged up. I think that's pretty bad.
That is bad, actually. I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna come back around to that. I think I'm gonna have to go cheap tight end here. Do you think Dalton Schultz becomes a better play with the fact that the offensive line for Houston is so bad? Maybe Dalton Schultz more of a safety valve. I mean, Diggs has run a lot of pretty short routes also, so you'd think he could benefit from being pressured more. But Schultz, I would think, also kind of falls into that.
Yeah, I can see it.
I don't think I'm doing it in this lineup. I might end up coming back to it, but we're thinking through there. I think I'm going to go with Goddard in this lineup. Get all those targets.
Oh, I'm hearing Nico is 100% playing. My Houston source just read my article.
Love it. Love it.
I was late. Old news. My bad, guys.
All right, I'm coming back to defense. Steelers defense against Anthony Richardson sort of interests me there. Maybe the Browns defense against Vegas. I kind of like that. Just
this is like way too much energy put into defense.
You are right. I usually just let the opto decide my defense for me. I said, here's about the max I want of any defense, and then you tell me who you want to put in the lineup. But when I'm hand building, I do spend a little bit more time on it. All right, so I really like. So we don't have anybody from Arizona right now. I could go to B-Rob. I think I'm going to see what I can get if I put James Conner in there, though, just because he's going to be so low owned.
I like it.
And then 4,600 remaining. It gets gross. John Mooney is there. I mean, you talked about Cleveland being so game script dependent. This Deontay Foreman would make sense. We didn't even talk about him. I didn't write him up, but it is the one of the best possible matchups against that Las Vegas defense. If Deontay Foreman, if it is a good game script for Deontay Foreman, where they're playing from ahead, as we're anticipating with the Browns defense here, I think Deontay Foreman would actually potentially make sense in this lineup. I don't know if I want to do that. I think that's probably doesn't have the upside I need. I'm already playing Roshan. I think I'd rather pay up for another running back here. So maybe I come away from Goddard, go down to Brenton Strange for a double bring back. Now I have 6,600 left. Go to Ayuk.
London. Aaron Jones.
Brian Robinson is there too again.
Aaron Jones, I mean, we're talking about how the rise of too high coverage safety switches is killing the passing game. Maybe running back in the flex is more viable than ever.
I definitely think it's more viable than ever. So now here, this is an interesting lineup. You could also swap out off of Roshan for Foreman if you prefer Foreman with the Browns defense. I think that could make some sense also. But I think I'm just going to roll with this lineup. Unless what's 3,700? Is there a defense? I mean, the Jets defense pretty solid here against Denver. Could consider that, but I'm going to stick with the Browns here. Here it is. So I got CJ Stroud double stacked with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. We have the double bring back in Brian Thomas Jr. and Brenton Strange, Roshan Johnson, James Conner one-offs, Aaron Jones in the flex is a one-off as well, and then Browns defense. So nothing. So just the one full game stack is the only real correlative piece, as far as I can tell. But still, I think this is a pretty strong lineup, pretty contrarian in some spots. We'll enter that one, and then let's go one more.
I feel good about it. This is the lineup that's going to win me a milli.
Yeah, the one that I
very
just,
little
you contributed Aaron Jones though, so you did.
Yes. And he's the one snowflake. Watch.
Yeah, right. I mean, as long as it wins a milli, I don't care if there's a snowflake. All right, so we've done.
This is our collaborative lineup.
This is our collaborative lineup. Let's think about it. Oh man, a lot of people are out on Diggs in chat. People are saying that you got to get him out of there. All right.
No, that's how you know you're right.
That's right.
We could do Fields and Pickens. We can do a chalky QB. We can do Baker doubles, or we could get really weird and try that Purdy lineup we keep talking about. We can.
I kind of love the Fields and Pickens idea.
Yeah. Okay. I was hoping you were going to say that. Let's do that.
Yeah. Let's give it a shot. Fields and Pickens. I would not be inclined to run a bring back here from the Colts.
Not even your boy, Alec Pierce?
My boy, Alec Pierce.
Who's led the team in receiving yards in 3 straight games, who Anthony Richardson wore an Alec Pierce shirt to the game in week 2, who Anthony Richardson only does one thing well, which is the deep ball, which is what Alec Pierce specializes in. Your boy?
You're right. My boy is there, but yeah, against Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Nope.
So we go with a cheaper stack here, which should allow us to pay up for some of those better running backs. I would think, are there running backs that you love at the top, or just in general?
Yeah, I mean, all those guys are awesome. I said my lean was Barkley.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Do we want to do double spend up at running back? You also have, James Conner, Brian Robinson, kind of mid-range prices.
Mm-hmm. Let's just go Saquon again.
We got Saquon already in here.
Okay. Well, then let's move to wide receiver.
Okay. You do.
I want to get one of Marv, Jaden Reed on it, and then we can eat the chalk probably elsewhere.
Yeah, we got away from Marv on the last one, so let's try to get Marv into this one. We probably play Jaden Reed too, if you wanted to.
Oh, that's spicy.
Yeah, just play all of your guys. We still have 43.25 left per player. Probably want to go cheap tight end and defense, I would think, so we can pay up at running back. Do you want Elijah Higgins in this one? Tommy Tremble.
Yeah, I do like Higgins.
All right, let's go.
You could eat the Bowers chalk. Strange.
Do you care if we already have Harrison? Does that affect your decision to put Higgins in this one?
Oh, it doesn't really. But,
it doesn't to me either. I think that's totally fine with the prices.
But let's just do Strange, just for the sake of it.
Okay. Now we have 47.33 left per player. We could throw the Vikings defense in here.
Yeah. Let's see what happens.
Oh, we do have Vikings defense against Jaden Reed now.
Could you play Najee? Is that possible?
Oh yeah.
Probably not.
In a Fields lineup?
Yeah.
The Colts have been so bad against the run.
What about Jonathan Taylor? Just worth having this conversation.
Tough matchup with Pittsburgh is just the downside there with so many good running back options. I guess this would be the one where you could think about doing it, but I don't love it. I think I'd be inclined to just go to one of the better options instead of correlating there.
Well, let's just throw Deontay in here.
If we have the Vikings defense, I wonder if we could get to. Yeah, you're right. Let's throw Deontay in the flex. Probably don't. I don't think we have enough for. We don't have enough for Aaron Jones. We 5,700 left. Chuba Hubbard, I kind of like. Najee does fit in this one if you wanted to throw him in there.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's get weird.
Weird with Najee? You want to go with the full-on Pittsburgh?
Well, no, this is your call. Him or Hubbard, because this honestly might be stupid.
I slightly prefer Hubbard just because he's not.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. You're the millionaire, Neil. Don't let some peasant who's never won more than $25,000 playing DFS bully you.
Well, you've won $25,000 more recently than I have, so you have that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is solid Fields with George Pickens. We've got no bringbacks on this one. Not a ton of correlation. We do have the Vikings defense against Jaden Reed, which not my favorite, but not something I think we need to change necessarily. Just a one versus one there. Hubbard and Barkley, I think, are both really strong individual plays. Love Marvin Harrison, Brenton Strange from Jacksonville. I think this is a strong lineup. It's not the most correlated lineup. We have the Hubbard and Deontay Johnson. I think that's totally fine, by the way, to have both of those in the same lineup. Something we maybe avoided a few years ago before realizing it hits all the time. Two players from the same team without the quarterback. I think it's a strong lineup.
Awesome.
All right. There we go. There you have it. Our third lineup is in. One of these for sure is going to win us $1 million this week. Scott,
what if we finish first, second, and third?
We could try. That'll be the goal. We're gonna try to finish first, second, and third. All right. Any final thoughts, Scott? What else do you have going on this weekend?
Yeah, I gotta be active in Discord with all these injuries, and I got the Sunday morning update with Johnny tomorrow.
Nice. And I will be doing the Sunday Night Football breakdown for Fantasy Points. You'll be able to find that tomorrow at Fantasy Points if you're playing some Sunday Night Football showdown. But thank you, Scott, as always. Thanks for everybody for hanging out with us, and we will be back next Saturday afternoon. See you then.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.